Hello then, so this is something we haven't done in a long while. This is a quick bulletin for Overwatch Contenders. Yes, Tier 2! We can't forget about Tier 2, the Overwatch League may be kicking and screaming right now, but Tier 2 is well on its way, and I tell you what, there's been a lot of improvements to the Tier 2 scene, especially Europe and NA, with its broadcast and stuff that have really done wonders for the Tier 2 scene. It's actually on the up for once, which makes a difference for Tier 2, huh? Anyway, we're going to go over every single region and get to exactly where they're at right now. It's going to be like a bulletin sort of style. This is not going to happen all that often. This is not going to be a weekly or a monthly. It might be a monthly thing. Okay, it might be a monthly thing, but it's certainly not going to be a weekly thing. We are between NA and EU seasons right now, or months, I should say. So, we're going to start off with Australia. Australia, all of these regions tend to have different formats because of the way in which Contenders works these days. There's no Pacific region or South American region anymore. It is just Australia, Korea, China, North America, and Europe. So, we're going to talk about Australia first. Direwolves and Mindfreak topped out the group stage in Australia for the regular season of Season 1. They were both on 4-1 records. Mindfreak were current champions, I believe. Although that might be previous to that, and Ground Zero Gaming followed them up with Warriors Esports. Those four went through to the playoffs in Australia on 4-1 records, and then Ground Zero Gaming and Warriors Esports went through on 3-2 records. Team FP and Forgiver both did not make it through. Forgiver finished in 6th and did not even pick up a map, let alone a win. So that's very, very unfortunate for their record. By the time this video goes out, the Australian playoffs will have started. The first match will be Direwolves versus Warriors Esports, and the second match will be Mindfreak versus Ground Zero Gaming. I am sure Mindfreak versus Ground Zero Gaming will be one hell of a match, because that is always normally a very big match in Australia. Two big rivals that have been going at it for quite a few years now, and I'm sure that will be very entertaining. They will move on to the winners' finals, etc. that will be played over the next couple of weeks. Anyway, that's your Australian region. Now let's talk about China. China, again, does it slightly differently. They have a much more extensive regular season of 8 teams. Half of them qualify through to the knockout stage, and half of them don't. And then there is a regular season 2, which hasn't started yet. But the first regular season, we see the standings in China topped out by Team Chaser and Bilibili Gaming, both on 6-1 records. Team Chaser are the academy team of Chengdu Hunters in the Overwatch League, and Bilibili Gaming are the academy team of Hangzhou Spark. I'll get there in a minute. So interesting stuff there. There's no Team CC anymore because they have moved to Korea. So it's interesting, with no domination from Team CC, who was going to take over in China, and it appears that Team Chaser and Bilibili Gaming are fighting out for that top spot. In third place, First Fabulous Fighter came up with a 5-2 record, and then the one winner came up with a 4-3 record in that 4th place. They very, very, very slightly squeezed out Up Academy, who didn't end up making it through, and Up Academy are the academy team of the Guangzhou Charge. So a lot of rough stuff going on there, especially for the Chargers academy team right now, but they did end up obviously proceeding to the playoff stage, the knockout stage. The semi-finals went as Team Chaser going in a 3-2 victory against the one winner, very close, and another very close semi-final stage saw Bilibili Gaming win 3-2 against First Fabulous Fighter. That is all the results I have right now. Obviously, losers round 1 will be the one winner taken on First Fabulous Fighter, and the winners final will be Team Chaser versus Bilibili Gaming. That should be rather interesting, because that's the 2 top hitters in China right now. And who knows? Who knows with that? We could also see a rematch of that in the grand finals, depending on if the person who loses that winners finals can then beat the person who is in the losers final, which will be the one winner, or First Fabulous Fighter. You would expect probably a rematch between Team Chaser and Bilibili Gaming in the grand finals of China for Season 1, Part 1, I suppose. I suppose that's how you call it in China. Anyway, moving on from China, let's move on to Korea. Korea is super interesting because there is new blood in Korea at the moment. Team CC moved over from China, obviously. They are an incredibly good team. Talon Esports obviously came over from the Pacific a long while ago, and they dominated. They did really well last year, had a lot of promise, and this year they're looking to push even further. T1 used to be the old Academy team of Philadelphia of the Fusion Uni. The Academy team of Philadelphia Fusion, still quite tightly linked. World Game Star Phoenix, last year's champions, or last season's champions, I should say. They have had a significant rebuild, as you would expect. A lot of their talent has been scouted by other teams and Overwatch League, Aztec notably moving on to Toronto Defiant, one of those as well. And a few going over to Boston Uprising. 37 was on loan there as well. Runaway, they are middle packers at the moment. Runaway, they're not the dominant Runaway we are used to or have known before. There's a lot of rebuild going on with Runaway, but they always have that clutch potential, so that's something to keep an eye on. Team BM, Team Diamond, Starlight Gaming, and Gen G all round that out. The standings, though, is divided up into groups in Korea, so we have Group A and Group B. Group A was made of Team CC, O2 Blast, World Game Star Phoenix, Team BM, and Starlight Gaming. Starlight Gaming got pretty comprehensively swept out of that group. Team BM finished in 4th with a 1-3 record. That will see them through to the first part of the Interleague stage, which is the next part of the Korean calendar. Then the top 3 will go World Game Star Phoenix in 3rd. World Game Star Phoenix, or WGS Phoenix, will be slipping down slightly. They don't have quite the quality they had, and therefore they are suffering slightly. O2 Blast are 2nd. They were unbeaten until they came up against the top place Team CC, and they ended up losing to Team CC. There's a lot of quality there in both of those teams. O2 Blast obviously got winning credentials from Contenders Korea. Team CC, the new guys on the block, although were heavily dominant in Chinese contenders, but they are now all Korean. So there is a lot of quality there. Team CC and O2 Blast still could do a lot. I wouldn't expect WGS Phoenix or Team BM to do anything too much in the Interleague or playoffs, but you never know. Then we move over to the Group B, Gen G Esports. You know, Gen G, they're a team we've known in Korea for a long time, Academy team of Seoul Dynasty. They got pummeled in this early part of this season in Contenders Korea. They didn't win a match, and they got fairly comprehensively swept aside. They didn't make it through the group stage, so they won't be going to the Interleague. In 4th, we have Team Diamond, a team that is hanging around Korean Contenders at the moment. Never been at the top, but they are kind of the middlers of the league in Korean Contenders, doing fairly well. They will be making it to the Interleague just about. Runaway in 3rd, 2-2 record, again losing out to T1 and Talon Esports, who are above them. Runaway, again, they're not quite there. They're not quite there at the moment. They're struggling to keep up with the biggest boys. But when it comes to Interleague and playoffs, when it comes to the crunch, Runaway have a habit of turning up. So we can't ever count that out. And Runaway always have that slight clutch potential, so you never know who might come out of the shadows and cause an upset for those big teams. And then we have T1 in 2nd. Their only loss is against Talon Esports, who are above them again. T1, incredibly capable team. A lot of quality. In the top 2 of each group, there is an incredible amount of quality in each team. T1 have a lot of well-known names. Unique used to be on the Element Mystic. Krillin and Celestin from the excellent Spitfire squad, rated actually quite highly, even though they were on that London squad. And then MN3, who is a massive DPS prospect in Korea. So yeah, there's a lot of quality to this T1 roster, although they did lose out, obviously, to Talon Esports. It was a fairly comprehensive display when Talon Esports actually managed to beat T1. They are looking extremely capable with their new look roster, shall we say, because in the off-season, obviously, they lost people like Feather, Django, and Piggy to the Overwatch League. Django and Piggy now at Houston Outlaws doing really well, and Feather, we're about to see him this weekend for New York Excelsior. But these new players coming in, Kellen, Attack on the tanks, and they got Vigilante still, Heesang Develop, and Chorong. It looks like a great roster. A really, really good roster, and a roster that could easily win Korean Contenders in this first season. So it'll be very interesting to keep a very close eye on how this Korean Contenders season pans out. So with those teams going through, the slightly different and unique style of Korean Contenders now, they go into an Interleague where you get the first seed tiebreaker, so that's the 2 first seeds from each group taking on each other. This will be in about a week's time, so that'll be Team CC versus Talon. That'll be massive. Be a massive match, super interesting. Then you get the 3rd seed tiebreaker to decide who's 2nd and 3rd seed. That'll be between to decide who's 3rd and 4th seeds, I should say. That will be between O2 Blast and T1. That'll again be super interesting. 2 very closely matched teams. That's what I'm trying to say. And then 5th and 6th seed will be decided between WGS Phoenix and Runaway. That is a rematch of Season 2 finals of last year. And that's going to be super interesting. I don't know who will come out on top. I think it could possibly be Runaway. On the right comp, Runaway can be dominant. And on everything else, Runaway can be middle of the pack. So, yeah, that's kind of how it goes with that. And then the 7th and 8th seed will be decided between Team BM and Team Diamond. We're not expecting them to do too much. There's been a big sort of skill gap between the 4th place in the group, the 3rd place in the group, the 2nd place in the group, and the 1st place in the group. There's kind of been a fairly big skill gap, generally across Contenders' career. But all of this will take place in a week's time, and then they will go into a playoffs, which is quite unique, actually. I think this is the first time that Overwatch has used a step-based playoff. So it'll be round 1 versus the 2 lowest seed, and then whoever wins that goes up against the next seed. And then whoever wins that goes up against the next seed. And whoever wins that goes up against the next seed. So on and so forth until you get to the top seed. So if you're Team Diamond or Team BM, you have to run all the way through this step playoff. But if you get that number 1 spot, you will only have 1 match to play in that step playoff. And that'll be the very last one. Whoever has run all the way through this bracket. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And it's a very unique style in Korea right now. But it's going to be super interesting. And that rounds us out for the East, actually, because now we're going to move over to the West, because we're going to talk about North America, and we're going to talk about Europe, who have had an entire month of play already. And I tell you what, it's been mighty interesting. Let's start off with the European region then. So, Europe. Last year was quite something, I think we can all agree. British Hurricane dominated in 2020, and they all got promoted to the London Spitfire in the Overwatch League. Hence, we have a brand new British Hurricane. Question is this brand new British Hurricane as good as the old British Hurricane? Well. First of all, this is a complete bracket knockout, apart from Trials, and we're not going to go over Trials in this video, but the teams that made it to the actual thing were obviously British Hurricane, Raspberry Racers, Oblivion, and Sheer Cold. They came from the Gauntlet top 4 of last year. And then we added in New Kings, Young and Beautiful, Shoes Money Crew EU, and Old and Bored, who all came up from Trials top 4. And Young and Beautiful have actually some very big names like Cruise and Boombox, Nico and Bembest, although Cruise and Boombox has since left the Young and Beautiful team after this season of this month of Contenders, I'm trying to say. New Kings have people like Lolshish and KSA, Raspberry Racers. They have some very well-known names from the European region like Finzi and Cloud, Lethal and Doge. Oblivion, big UK team you could probably say, with UK influence like Backbone, White Noise. Also Smex, who used to be on Paris Eternal, didn't get much time there because of his health issues, and I'm glad to see him back. There's a lot of great talent. Danid, the ex-British Hurricane player, now finds herself at Shoes Money Crew EU, which is really, really interesting. The British Hurricane roster still has Sparker, because Sparker is on a 2-way from London Spitfire, because he is currently not old enough to play in the Overwatch League. He's now backed up by Yikitel, Vestola, Skydipper, and Admiral Raptor. A very, very stacked British Hurricane roster. And they have basically said, let's get a load of the best European talent that we saw from last year and put them all together in one roster. And yes, British Hurricane things, am I right? Let's move on to what happened in the fixtures then. So, in the quarterfinals, British Hurricane would take on Old and Bored. That would be a 2-0 sweep. It's first to 2 in these early stages. So that was fairly comprehensive. Sheer Cold would take on New Kings, again, 2-0 sweep. Oblivion would take on Shoes Money Crew EU, again, 2-0 sweep for Shoes Money Crew EU. And then Raspberry Racers would take on Young and Beautiful, again, a 2-0 sweep for Young and Beautiful. So that all kind of went pretty quickly. Losers bracket round 1 went to the first to 3 again. Oblivion snapped back, and then they get a 3-0 win over Raspberry Racers, knocking them out, and then Sheer Cold would knock out Old and Bored 3-1. So that was pretty comprehensive. The winners bracket semi-finals was British Hurricane taking on New Kings. Again, this wasn't close. British Hurricane, 3-0 New Kings. British Hurricane things, you know. Then Shoes Money Crew EU versus Young and Beautiful. This is a little bit of a surprise, because we expected Young and Beautiful to be better, but they didn't. Shoes Money Crew EU get a 3-1 win. Shoes Money Crew EU really stepped up in this part of Korean contenders? Shoes Money Crew EU in EU, in Korea, that would be funny. yeah, in this part of EU contenders, Shoots Korea EU really stepped up. So they would set up a winners final against the Hurricane. But first of all, the losers bracket round 2, and we see New Kings take on Ex-Oblivione again. Ex-Oblivione really makes some surprises here, beating New Kings 3-1. Ex-Oblivione really did snap back in this losers bracket, I can tell you that for sure. Young and Beautiful would take on Sheer Cold. That'd be a 3-1 win for Young and Beautiful. This then went on to the losers bracket round 3, where we saw Ex-Oblivione take on Young and Beautiful, and this was an even bigger surprise because Ex-Oblivione will manage to knock out Young and Beautiful 3-1. We did not expect Ex-Oblivione to be as good as they turned out in this month of contenders, so that was a really big surprise. Now we go back over to the winners bracket, because we could winners bracket final between British Hurricane and Shoots Crew EU. This would be a 3-2 win for British Hurricane. Shoots Crew EU, finally, someone to take maps off of the Hurricane. But again, not enough. Hurricane clutch it out, as Hurricane very often do. Shoots Crew EU would go down to the losers final against Ex-Oblivione, and again, we would be surprised by the snapback from Ex-Oblivione, who got a 3-1 win over Shoots Crew EU in style as well. And, yep, Ex-Oblivione were looking darn good. They set it up against British Hurricane, and it ended up going to British Hurricane. It was a 4-2 to British Hurricane, so it was not a sweep. It was very impressive how Ex-Oblivione came back through a lot of... After being, fairly easy dumped out the winners bracket by Shoots Crew, to come back and then beat Shoots Crew EU, go all the way through the losers bracket and make it to the grand final against British Hurricane. Very, very well done from Ex-Oblivione. But, yes, it does inevitably mean British Hurricane are on top of EU again. Anyone gonna stop the Hurricane? Anyone? At this point, I really don't know. Hurricane they seem like Thanos. You just can't stop them. They're gonna snap, dude. That's what they're gonna do. That's just Hurricane. I'm sure someone will come up and bite Hurricane eventually, but it's gonna take a while because this Hurricane squad does look good, although it does have some holes in it, especially for Stolar. I don't think he's as good as an off-tank as Molfig was, should we say. But North America then. This was comprised in the main tournament of American Tornado, Odyssey, Dark Mode NA, Ardor, Revival, Obey Alliance, Wisp, and Maryville Esports. So, American Tornado have had some changes, Dark Mode have had some comprehensive changes. There is a power shift in North America though, and it's not as clear in North America as it is in EU, who is quite dominant right now. And it was very, very close. So, first of all, American Tornado would take on Wisp. This was again comprehensive, 2-0 for American Tornado. American Tornado, a very great team in North America right now. Ardor would take on a Revival. This would be a 2-0 win for Revival, getting a win over their ex-player Aspen. Then Dark Mode would take on Obey, again a 2-0 for Obey, and then Odyssey would take on Maryville, and it would be a 2-0 for Odyssey. You see how the quarterfinals of the winners bracket, very often, they just go one way. It's not very often a close match, but then losers bracket, Maryville took on Dark Mode. Dark Mode would get a 3-1 win. Then Ardor would take on Wisp, and this would be a 3-1 win for Wisp. I'd actually thought Ardor would do better than they did, which is slightly disappointing from their point of view. But moving on from that, winners bracket semi-final, American Tornado take on Revival. This would be a 3-0 win for American Tornado. Not too much to be surprised about there. Again, we thought American Tornado were pretty high, power rankings-wise, in North American contenders, so we're expecting them to be darn good. Obey Alliance would take on Odyssey in the other semi-final, and Odyssey will get a 3-1 win over Obey Alliance. Obey Alliance switching over from the EU region. Obey Alliance are an org. They took over Raspberry Races in EU, did well with them, and then dropped Raspberry Races, hence Raspberry Races is back in EU now, and went back to their native NA and created a team there. So that's the story of Obey Alliance right now. But Odyssey will get a 3-1 win and move on to the winners bracket final. But in losers bracket round 2, we saw Revival take on Dark Mode. This will be a 3-1 win for Revival. Again, nice snapback from them after losing quite comprehensively to American Tornado. And then Obey Alliance will get a 3-1 victory over Wisp. Again, Wisp, one of the weaker teams in the competition, so it's not too much of a surprise that they get past them. This means we go into the losers bracket round 3, where we see Revival take on Obey Alliance. Revival come out as 3-1 winners there. Again, not too much of a surprise. Revival are a better team than Obey Alliance right now. Obey Alliance still trying to find their footing in NA, and I think they will get better with time. Winners bracket final though. American Tornado versus Odyssey. Close match. Mighty close match. But they do turn out American Tornado 3-2 winners. So yeah, again, American Tornado finding their way through these fixtures right now. This meant that Odyssey dropped into the losers bracket final against Revival. I got there in the end. This is another 5-map series, but Revival would get the 3-2 victory over Odyssey again. So Revival would set up a rematch against American Tornado. Now, last time they played American Tornado was in the semi-finals, obviously. They got swept 3-0. This is a completely different story. Revival take American Tornado to 7 maps and beat them 4-3 and take home the title of March NA Contenders Champions. This was unexpected. It was a hell of a match, I'm not going to lie. Incredible match to watch. We even saw the LH Cloudy Zarya, which I don't think we really expected. I see an LH Cloudy swapping roles at times on Lijiang due to circumstances, and they still managed to get the win on that map. Really impressive stuff. Great turnout from Revival, and they are currently on top of NA for the first time ever, after a pretty torrid gauntlet, I think we can agree. And the snapback from Revival is great. Question is, it's very close, right? So American Tornado can still come back, Odyssey could still come back because they took American Tornado and Revival close. There is a lot of competition in North America, and so it's gonna be super interesting to see how it works out. Can't wait to see this next up-and-coming month of contenders for EU and NA, which is coming anytime now. In the next week or so, we will see that start up again, and we will see if British Hurricane and Revival can be dethroned from their respective places at the top. But that is a roundup for contenders right now. That is about a month and a half's worth of contenders action we just crammed into about 20 minutes. So yeah, long video, not going to keep you much longer. Back with Overwatch League action tomorrow, obviously lead into week 2 where we get to see, yes, more European action because, yes, London Spitfire and Paris Eternal will be coming in for the next month. But, the next week I should say. But I am going to leave it here. Socials are linked in the video description for Legion Gaming and myself. Don't forget to join the Discord server where there's a load of crazy stuff going on. You get some inkling of what's going to be in the videos before they sometimes come out, including predictions for Overwatch League in Overwatch League weeks before they are actually put in the video. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.